30 years since Dave was there.
20 years later.
All right, so this morning, instead of going through our lesson on 1 Peter 3, and actually for next week too, we won't be in that next week. We'll be having our voters meeting next week during Bible class hour. But I wanted, before we get to the voters meeting, I want to make sure everybody is up to speed on where we're at with the property matters. So last week, I had announced that we had a couple of offers on the property. One was a significantly better offer, came in at $680,000, and the other one was significantly less, came in at $650,000, but it had quite a few stipulations. On Tuesday, wasn't it Tuesday?
What? I'm sorry.
When Jewel called, no, Tuesday, I think, was the day that Jewel called and said, bad news, buyer
That was
backed out.
Wednesday.
That was Wednesday.
No, because,
Okay, so it was Wednesday. Wednesday, the buyer that had the good offer backed out. So we were left with a quandary of what to do. Well, we still had this other offer that wasn't very good. So we decided to counter offer. They had $650, we countered to $710. And then they countered back at $690. So that's the number we're dealing with right now. But,
690 minus 18.
well, hold on, I'll get to it. $690,000. I wanna write all this up here so everybody understands what we're working with. So you're right. Before the minus 18, there's another thing that comes into play, and that's commission for the agents. Okay, that comes in at 3%. Anybody quick at math in their head? What is it? Okay.
That's probably only about $4,000.
You're on the right track. It's 41,400. Right? That's the 6%. Did I say 3%?
You said 3.
Sorry, it's 6%. 6% is the agent's commission. Okay, so that comes off of there. Now the next thing is, as part of this agreement to this offer, we are going to be responsible for $18,000 of closing costs. This is what commission? Now I asked Jewel, what is the total of the closing cost? And she gave me the number. That's where the 3 comes in. Closing cost is 3% of the transaction. That goes to the real estate attorney who handles making sure everything is legal and then documented by law. So 3% of the price goes to, so we're losing 9% right here. But then there's 2 other little things that go along with this. One is they want the septic tank pumped. Last time we had that done, I think it was $1,500, so I don't know what the exact cost of that is. Yes?
how often is that typically done, like, to have your septic?
Because, okay, the reason this is going to be done is because FHA,
Right, no, I'm just
requires
saying, in a typical household, like, not talking about the sale of
it
the house or.
sometimes it happens, sometimes it's like 50-50.
No.
What?
I don't- So I'm not talking about with the sale or with anything, like
Oh.
Right,
typically,
if you
how
stayed here for the
often?
next 50 years, how often would you have
You
a
might,
problem?
you might never have a problem. Some of it depends, I mean, it completely depends on usage. But you might never have a problem with a septic tank. But then again, you might.
Okay, 'cause,
We did have it done 3 years ago.
right. I
But
was-
that's not enough for the sale of this property. It has to be done because the buyers are going through FHA. And that's a federal agency. So, they're requiring the septic tank to be pumped. And then they are requiring another thing, and this is also a requirement by FHA. That's $500, that's for a termite protection contract. You getting questions or comments or no? Okay. So that leaves us with a bottom line. Quick, I'll write it down.
61,400.
313,600. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
no, I missed a giant thing. You know what the giant thing I missed is?
Our loan.
We have to pay off the mortgage to this property. Anybody know what that is?
No.
310,000.
Well, close. So the mortgage,
Making us work.
the mortgage is right at 315,000 as of the end of January. It's a little under that by about, I think it's like $260 or something. So now do the math.
Well, you said a 3%. Was that part of that 18,000 and the closing? You said 6% commission, then you said 3% on, so that's where that 18 comes from?
Yeah, why are those numbers so different? Do it quick on your calculator.
Well, I did the 6% and the 41,400 is correct.
Oh, I know why it's 18,000, because the actual number is,
So we're paying 18.
we're paying
they're
18 of it, they're paying the remaining 2,400, or
Okay.
2,200, that's what it is. That's why that number's different. So, after all of that comes off, what we will be left with, and I'm just gonna erase all this now, everybody's got an idea of
Okay,
what's coming out of the 690,000.
I'll ask.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering about the termite thing. So they're wanting a termite, so they're wanting us to pay somebody to come out and do termite stuff? So we're not only that, so that's gonna cost $500?
Right.
Or, okay.
Okay? That's a rough ballpark estimate. I haven't actually got any quotes on that yet. Okay, and the same as with the septic. Any other questions? Okay, so after you minus all of this from this, now I'm gonna write the bottom line number. Because it's important in regards to the going forward part. The bottom line number is $313,600. Now, I want you to understand what that means. That is, that's money for us to work with as far as going forward, buying another piece of property and building our church, which has been the thing that this is now the alleviator to the problem that we've had for the past 5.5 years, going on 6 now. The problem we've had is we haven't had access to the funds to build the church. We've had access to the funds to buy this property, but then that was it. So from that, I want to go now into what our possible alternatives are. Chuck and Alan and I, with some input from Jeff Radical of the CLC Board of Missions, did a lot of work this week trying to get to the numbers that we needed to make this work. And so I'm gonna give this to you first, then I have another one after this, but I wanna go through all the possible scenarios that we're confronted with. So you see across the top there, there's 3 possibilities. Huh? Oh, that's good, then just listen. We have three possible scenarios here. First is go and buy a new parsonage and build a 40 by 60 church, 40 foot by 60 foot. The next possibility we considered was go and buy a new parsonage and build a 30 by 50 church. And then you've got the new parsonage and then just rent a church. And as you go down, you can see how that affects expenses. Now, there is a possible fourth scenario here. It is one that was put forward by Jeff Radical from the Board of Missions. You guys may have to be content with just renting a parsonage for a while. That's not something that Alan and Chuck and I were really interested in going down that avenue. So it was just a question of how the numbers would work out. And we think, well, along with the renting of the parsonage for a while, there's a side part to that. That is to give us time to look for another piece of property that would be suitable to what we need. Now the question is, do we want to go down that path? And the reason we thought it wasn't in our best interest to go down that path is because by the end of the first year, renting a house and renting a place for church, we're going to be without 70 thousands of these dollars. And that digs into a hefty chunk of what we are going to need to build a church. So,
Yeah, I don't see the cost of buying a house dropping.
Not-
70,000 to make up
right,
that difference.
right, and in fact, I've been paying attention to what the real estate analysts are saying. They don't see the housing market in the Atlanta area dropping off hardly at all. As far as the price of homes. The Southeast is experiencing not a reduction in the need for for housing, but it's still increasing as populations are flowing this direction today.
I remember last week you said something about us being estimated around 900.
That was back in September. That was just an online estimate. That wasn't an actual appraiser
What
coming
was our
out.
actual estimate that we got a few years
Our actual estimate that we got a few years ago was between 675 and 740,000. So
with-
that's
with
about where
the-
we are.
With the house market increasing, why?
It's not increasing anymore. It's just not, the need for housing is increasing, but
Yeah,
the cost of housing isn't still dramatically increasing like it had been.
so I was thinking, why wouldn't we ask a little bit higher than what we are? And then people, when they give us an offer, it's around where.
Because we decided on a number and that's what we went with.
Okay.
So let's discuss each of these three columns and you'll see how the numbers work out. The first one, buy a parsonage and build a 40 by 60 church. So that price, that $415,000, that is just keeping in mind one particular scenario. And the reason this one particular scenario that we have is, it's not like we were trying to maximize how much we should spend on a piece of property that has a house, or minimize how much we should spend on a piece of property that has a house. It's that we know of one individual and just down the road, 3 minutes from here, that has 5 acres that are open, has a typical CLC pastor style house, that is a ranch style house with a basement. Much smaller than the current one. And the asking price on that house right now is $450,000, but I talked to the owner and he said, look, make me an offer, I'm gonna take it, because I need to move, I'm going to Tennessee. So I thought, okay, well, this might be a good starting point for us. Maybe we could come in and say, how about 410,000, and he might counter with 420,000, and then we might counter with, let's split the difference. So that was just kind of how the scenario played out in my mind. Hopefully we could get that property for 415,000. So that's where that number comes from. And then you have closing costs. There's where the 3% number comes in again. 3% on 415,000 is 12,450. Now, the rest of everything in that column, and this is true for the next column as well, everything after that pertains to building a church. Okay? That's just to obtain the property and the house, is the 415 plus the 12,450. So you got the turn lane. We were told by the county a couple years ago, well, it's been about 3 years ago now, that a turn lane on this road would be $25,000. Now, on the road that this property is on, it would not be that much because it doesn't have to be that long. This is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that significantly reduces how long the turn lane has to be, and even how wide it has to be. So we could see some savings on that number, but that's just the only number that we have received so far. So that's the number we put in. The next is permits. That was a quick guess. I don't know who came up with that number. That might have been something that Jeff just threw out there. He said, just figure 5,000, that'll easily cover it. Builder's insurance, so if you have somebody come in and put a building on your property, you have to insure in case of any accidents while they're working. Site work and slab, this was the number we were given a couple years ago, 31,000 for a 40 by 60. Landscaping and drainage, so once you get done, you have to have a retention pond. And then there's gonna obviously be a little bit of other work that needs to be done to make it not look like a mud pit after the excavating crew comes in.
Are, like, all the building numbers and whatnot for, like, the stuff with the building, is that stuff we're planning on doing ourselves, or is that?
Hold on, I'll get to it.
Okay.
I'll get to it. So, and then we have the septic system. That was an estimate we were given back when we had a company tell us this septic system needed to be replaced, $7,500. Now, I've since heard from other septic guys that says, no, it's not even gonna be close to that amount. If you're paying $7,500, you're paying twice as much as you need to. So, possible savings there, I don't know. So everything from the turn lane down to the septic system is all hired out stuff. Okay? Unless any of you want to pour a slab. I don't particularly want to. Cara says she thinks she can. Okay, now everything from there down to wall ceilings and floors are estimates that I provided on material only. I shouldn't say they're estimates. They are pretty cold hard numbers. I looked them all up individually, every single little item. So you have the electrical rough-in, that's all the wire and all the boxes, and the panel and the meter, and then the cable to get from the meter to the power line on the pole. So that's $5,175. Once the interior is finished, there's another $2,176 of finishing the electrical. That's all the outlets, all the switches, all the lights, all the breakers, such things as that. Of course, on the interior, you're also gonna need to build some walls. That's what all the framing is. And then you've got plumbing. We would need 2 bathrooms and a little kitchenette. And then you have wall, ceilings, floors, that's sheetrock, drop ceiling, and then flooring.
That's a big difference in the steel building.
One second, I'll get there. I got a message coming in. So Lance says several years ago, he was told $3,500 to $4,000 for a septic system replacement. Which is in agreement with what I was told when we found out that there was a problem with this septic. Turned out Jediah and I were able to fix that one ourselves, and we didn't need to replace it. So the wall, ceilings, and floors includes, I just priced carpet like this to go in the church and in the entryway, predominantly because when you start pricing harder flooring, it gets expensive in a hurry. You could put the luxury vinyl flooring, like what we put in the upstairs of the house here, that comes in at $269 a square foot. And this carpet comes in at 89 cents a square foot. Now I know it's easier to quickly clean a hard surface floor as opposed to a carpet floor that has to be methodically vacuumed. But I just made a choice. I mean, and that, just for this purpose. I mean, all this stuff is for the congregation ultimately to decide where to add costs, where to take away costs. I'm just giving you a rough estimate of what I've got in mind here, so that we could have some hard numbers. So all of that interior work, I have contracted as self-help. That means we do it ourselves. None of it is intensely laborious except the sheetrock, and that's not too bad because I didn't do it as sheetrock that goes on the ceiling. I'm doing drop ceiling in this estimate. So when you're just talking about the walls, well, you lay one 4x8 or 4x12 down, and you put another one on top of it. There's not a lot of holding involved. So you need 2 young guys that are going to move the sheetrock for you while you screw it in. But oh, look at that! There's a couple of young guys here.
I'll do it as long as it's not ceiling. I appreciate the drop ceiling.
Well, you can rent the sheetrock jack.
There was one I didn't see in here and you might have worked it in. What about HVAC?
HVAC. What happened to HVAC? I had it on my initial thing. HVAC we have estimated to be $7,500.
Okay.
And I think that's an overestimate, just knowing our HVAC guy here.
Yeah.
On a 60 by 40, you're not gonna need a 2-ton unit. And he charges $4,500 to put in a 2-ton unit on the house. So 60 by 40, you can get away with a 1.5 tons. And he did put a 1.5 tons one in, and that was $3,500. So.
Okay.
That's a good catch. I don't know why that's not on here. I'll have to add a row. Now, the next 3 numbers are define self-help. Self-help is, this is Chuck asking the question. Self-help is basically on the interior, I would serve as the contractor. And I would, through the course of the week, do as much as I can. Any member, of course, can come at any time, or any member's friends could come at any given time to help out. We also have the congregation over in Holy Trinity in West Columbia that has, over the years, kept asking me, when can we send a crew to come help you? Well, first we had to have a building to work on, and we haven't had that yet. But, you know, that's a congregation of 300 people. They've got a bunch of young guys that can come and help do some of the interior work. But then the next three things, steel building, erection of the building, parking. Now, this price, the $46,500, is current as of Friday, yesterday, because I talked to her yesterday morning. This price is only on the steel being delivered to our location. And you'll see it's a bit bigger of a number, and then the erection of the steel, we would have to go out and find a contractor who wants to come and put up the steel. This is an estimate on the price, not that we've gotten it from someone. Yes, sir.
Are you saying that that's what it costs for just the steel to be delivered, or?
Just the steel to be delivered.
For 46, yeah.
But, now, this price does not come from General Steel. That's the company that we had been looking at previously. They haven't gotten back to us. We've contacted them, and they have assigned our case to an individual. When I did the research on it 3 years ago, General Steel was coming in way lower than everyone else, and they were going to erect the steel. This one is a higher price than General Steel gave us, and we still have to go find someone to put it up. So hopefully General Steel's the same way they used to be. Now, I'm not saying that they are, but if this is our best price, which I don't believe it is yet, it's just our only hard price that we have in hand, there could be significant savings there. And then you have the parking. This is just an estimate. Parking is based on occupancy, so whatever you have for occupancy, that's going to determine how big your parking has to be. And this does also include some from the turn lane into the parking. Yes?
Does it have to be cement?
Doesn't have to be cement, it just has to have a hard surface.
Oh, so you can't do like a gravel parking lot?
You can't have a gravel parking lot. Now, over at Dollar Store, when they put that up, you'll notice that part of their parking lot is asphalt, and the other it's like this weird combination of gravel and concrete. So it's still a gravel surface, but it's a hard surface at the same time.
Because the cost of the concrete, they use more gravel.
They use a lot more gravel, so you can cut the cost on the concrete that way, right?
But it probably doesn't hold up as
No.
well.
It does not hold up as long.
Pour up everywhere there.
It's not even as thick. So, but it's an option for temporary savings.
Well, the dollar store's gonna get an awful lot more traffic on their parking lot than the church is.
Yep.
And as far as how long it's gonna last, I mean, they have daily traffic.
Right.
Yeah, but there's another side to consider with that, because traffic also keeps down weeds. And weeds can do a lot of damage to a surface. So you kind of have to go back and forth between the two. Which one is, what's the best price? Well, that's not true. You have to decide. Do we want the best surface, or do we want the best price, or do we want a combination of the two? So all of that is the cost. It comes to $622,895. We've worked in a 15% contingency. That 15% does not come from the cost of the house and the closing cost. Okay, so those are excluded. The 15% is only everything else from that point down. Okay, because there shouldn't be a 15% issue with the home and the property. But there could be a 15% issue with the building. And that's, 10% is normally typical for figuring in contingency when you're doing contract work. And it's not always used up. On occasion, more than that's used up. But generally speaking, you can plan on something not being quite right that's gonna cost a little bit more. And that's where the number comes in. Any questions on that column? You get a projected total there of 652,212. How does that work out? Well, the idea is to take 100K from this and apply it to the initial mortgage. And that would leave you with a mortgage on 315,000, which is
Right back where with a.
right back to where we are right now. But with a reduced monthly payment, because this mortgage started out with a $360,000 mortgage and 4% interest on that. This would be a $315,000 mortgage with only a 3.5% interest on it.
And it's not even just numbers, now we're set up to have what we need.
Yeah, that's a different matter though. So this, currently our mortgage on this property is $1,680 a month. This would bring us down to around, well, I think the next sheet that I have has a guesstimate on it. Yes, $1,129. So almost a little over $500 a month. Now that's not important to figuring out which approach to take here. It's important for us when we figure out what our annual budget is going to be. See what I'm saying? So now you place $100,000 down, you have $213,000 left. Do the math real quick. What do you got? Everything from turn lane down to parking, if you add all that up, you're gonna end up with $190,000, which will leave you still with $23,000 left over. So from the remaining $213,000, you'd still end up with about $20,000 to $25,000 left over to put in the general fund to do work. Make sense?
What about like moving costs, because you were talking about like,
That's a different, that's not part of this.
no, I'm saying that'll take away from that.
That's not part of this, okay? We're only doing project here,
Okay,
okay? All of that does have to be figured in, it's just not part of this,
okay.
okay?
Just what is the 100K on the mortgage? You mean the mortgage on,
That's a down payment.
okay.
So
I
that,
just was
you take that
confused by
400,
the word mortgage, that's all.
yeah, so you take the $415,000, you put $100,000 down right away, you're only mortgaging $315,000.
Okay.
So we're gonna go over to the next column. This is pretty much everything the same, except it's a smaller building by a third. And so that reduced pretty much the cost by a third. And that's all you have here is, there's some things, of course, that can't be reduced by a third. The size of your building does not affect the size of the turn lane that you have to have. It can affect the parking, but it won't in this case because we still need our sanctuary to be pretty much the same size, even though the entire building's not the same size. So what we're gonna have is less kitchen space, less office space, less entry space, less classroom space, but the sanctuary itself is still the same. Okay? So the occupancy wouldn't be affected. So whatever the parking is on the first scenario is what the parking would be on the second scenario as well. Everything else after that is a third. Third off. And so that brings you down to, you'll see, well, it's $63,000 savings if we go with the 30 by 50 building.
Which size is
This building right here is 27 by 24. So I was figuring the sanctuary of either situation being at least 30 by 30. And in fact, the first one is actually 30 by 40. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So now if you apply those numbers here, you still have your $315,000 mortgage, but you have about $60,000 less in cost. That leaves 60 added to our 25, that leaves $75,000 left over to put into the general fund. Make sense? Okay. The third scenario is just buying the house and renting a church. So there's no line item here for renting a church because that's not part of the project. That's no longer a project, that's just picking all this stuff up, finding a new location to go put it all in. But that cost now gets transferred over to the budget, just the price of the rent. It's not part of the project because there's no project involved there. And the same would be true with that fourth scenario that I mentioned. So if we went the third approach, what we would end up with is 100,000. We would end up with $213,000 left over to go into our general fund to use over the next 10 years, however we would choose. Make sense? All right, anybody online got any questions? I haven't checked my phone for a minute. Oh, yep, I got some. $8,000 pasture. I don't know if that means I'm worth $8,000. I'm certainly not a $6 million man, so. Anyhow, so those are the scenarios. Anybody have just overall any questions that you can think of or come up with? Yes?
I asked it earlier, but there's quite a bit of difference between the steel in the 40 by 60 to the 30 by 50. That's almost half. And
It's
you're not,
almost half the square footage.
Yeah.
You go from a 2,400 square foot down to a 1,500 square foot. So it's not half.
No,
Yeah, I don't know why that's a number that has to be corrected. That,
well,
what's 46, you got 13 and 13, it should be 20, no, 46 divided by 3 is 50, a little over 50, is 15, let's say 15,500, 15,500, yeah, that should be 30,000, 30,100. I don't know why that number went that way. You're right, the steel building on a 30 by 50 is that'd be $7,000 more than what it is listed at. But I remember seeing that number. I think the issue is, there was a reason that we had that number, and I don't remember what it is. Mark's on the right track when he says it's almost half the square footage. Well, it's closer to about 2/3 of the square
Yeah.
footage. It's in between 2/3 and half anyways. But when you're building, you don't have just the square footage. You have considerably less volume. So if you're talking about square footage of steel on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides, it's more than a third reduced. See what I'm saying? So the square footage is a third less, but not all the sides and everything. You've got considerably less.
what kind of occupancy would you figure the 30 by 50 to be versus the 40 by 60?
They figure a person per 7 square feet, I think is the number, of the gathering place. So if you have a 30 by 40,
30 by 50 or 40 by 60. or-
No, it's not the entire building, it's the area where they will gather. 30 by 40 is 1,200. And that may, you're asking me a good question, and I'm drawing on my memory, but as I see that, I know that's not right. Because I remember when I figured this building, when I first read that number, I figured we could have an occupancy of 45 for this building, for the one we're in right now. And this is 27 by 24, what's that come to? Almost 1,000. So there must be 5 square feet per person.
So maybe 60 people.
Yeah, 60 people roughly. All right, I don't have much time. I want to get to this other sheet. This next sheet is all about budget. And this is something important for us to work through because we've got to figure out what can we actually afford on a yearly basis, not just what can we afford to go buy right now, what can we actually afford to keep. And that's where this comes in. I'm sorry, the type is a lot smaller, so I'm gonna put on my glasses so I can actually read it. This is Chuck just putting together 3 scenarios. They don't correspond to the 3 scenarios that we have here, by the way. It's just 3 approaches we could take. Do we want to take a $250,000 loan, a $350,000 loan, a $450,000 loan? Well, he shows you how it affects our annual budget. So, the first section that has all those gray boxes there, those are just to answer questions on how we are going to approach what place is suitable for our purposes. Then you've got a series of lines there under if you go all the way to the left, you'll see the section that says pastoral compensation. So that's everything you guys pay me over the course of a year. Mileage really isn't pastor's compensation, but the rest of it is. Mileage is really an office expense. But the rest of that is all what you guys compensate me over the course of the year. Going all the way to the right, you have that 110 cost of living, 110 increase on July 1st, 2022. That's incorrect data now. The numbers are correct on the salary line, but what's not correct is that parenthetical statement. As of the beginning of 2023, convention mandated an 8% cost of living increase because it said no raises, but we do have to keep up with inflation. And so 8% came in at like $256. So that was added to my salary. So what Chuck has here is the correct numbers of what you pay me. It's just that parenthetical statement is incorrect. Pastor's housing. So you'll see how the mortgage gets affected depending on what size of mortgage you take. My health insurance, that's current. My retirement, that's current. Pastor's utilities, that's current average. Now, of course, if we move to a much smaller house, that's going to be reduced significantly. The number I think Chuck and I agreed with on that, just to make sure we have all the bases covered, is $350 a month. So you're going to see there almost a $2,400 savings from the bottom line. The mileage, like I said, that actually goes under church expenses or business expenses. But it averages out to be about $100 a month. The next section is the facility cost. So if we get this church built, what do we have? Church, rent, or mortgage? We won't have a mortgage. Now, that's only if we build. We won't have a mortgage because we have the money to pay for it. Now, if we decide we're not gonna build, then suddenly we do have a rent. We have money, but then we would have our budget increased by roughly $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year. Which is one of the reasons we believe it's in our best interest to go ahead and build. $30,000 a year added to our mortgage, you can see what would happen quickly, right? Because after we take away the $100,000, we only have $213,000 left over. If you're paying $30,000 a year for mortgage or for rent on a church, what do you got? You got 7 years, and that's it. Then what? We believe it is in our best interest to go ahead and build. Then you got, everything else is pretty straightforward. Church building utilities. I don't know why we don't, I think maybe that's where the difference is. If you take the pastor's compensation utilities, take $200 a month off of that, and then put it in for the church, even though it would come as one bill, the church's utilities would probably average around $200 a month, maybe less. We don't keep the heat or the AC all the way up, and nobody's using water during the week. So, but there would be internet. That is listed, but that's gonna be low on office expenses. Internet should be considerably higher. Right now, we're paying, together with the cell phone that you guys provide me, we're paying $220 a month. So the $100 is off. We'll have to make some corrections to these. After that, the rest of it is just additional expenses that come up over the course of the year that aren't. We try to have a guess for them, but they don't have an actual place to fall into in the budget, so they're listed individually. Now, we got the taxes thing. We're hoping to get that resolved. Outreach, travel for conventions, fellowship. Anyways, you end up with a bottom line number estimated of $78,648.36. Now, that's a significant savings to what our annual budget is here. And we still have some numbers that can be reduced on this budget. Right now, I think our budget for this year was $84,000. So you can see that would reduce it. Now, as you increase the size of the loan, of course, you're getting closer and bigger than our current budget, but with money in the bank. Right? The bigger the mortgage you take, the more of this $313,000 you have. So instead of making a $100,000 down payment on that other property, let's say we only made a $50,000 down payment. Well, that puts $50,000 back into this number. Or it doesn't take $50,000 out of this number, I should say. Okay, everything below the actual grids pertains to a whole different congregation. Should have been deleted, wasn't. So don't pay any attention to that. Anybody have any questions or comments on this?
What are the year one-time costs that are down at the bottom?
Year one-time cost.
Because the one under, the 350,000 loan is 20.
Oh, there's other numbers in there that don't belong, that doesn't belong to us, Jediah,
Okay.
and neither does the subsidy.
Okay.
Our subsidy right now is $500 a month, so that only comes to, 6,000.
Alright.
Now, what does apply to us is, well, that would have applied to us this past year, right? We were getting $600 a month, that would be $7,200.
And you will have, I mean, I know you said that didn't isn't involved, but you will have one-time costs for, like, if, when we get the church set up, they like, give you, it's.
Oh, yeah, you're
extra
gonna have some-
cost to start the electricity, to start the plumbing,
Yep,
so
well,
usually there's like.
right, okay. Maybe we wanna put a sign out. There's a one-time cost.
I was thinking, it's not a big thing right now, but we do still have that sign, even if we just upgrade.
Yeah, that's a different
it.
matter.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm just saying, we don't have time to talk about all the possible strings going off in different directions. But yeah, there's several one-time costs that can come up, maybe we wanna have an open house and have food or something like that for people in the neighborhood to come. Boy, you guys' heads popped up in a hurry when I said food.
Sounds exciting.
Yes. Other than that, any questions from anybody online? Minus the loans, Chuck says. Minus the loans. Nothing else. Good? All right, we'll stop there. All of this is, hopefully, you have a good understanding of what it is that we gotta decide next week. I'm so tired, oh my.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. But roll tide.